The next point is that it's a poor medical practice. Why is it a poor medical practice? It's the only time since 1945, that's when fluoridation began in the United States, that we've used the public water supply to deliver medicine. Yes, we add other chemicals to the water, no question about that. We add chlorine to the water. But we add those chemicals to treat the water. With fluoridation, we're using the water to deliver medicine via the tap. That's quite different. And we've never done that with any other medicine except fluoride. It's not a nutrient. Dr. Carney says it's a nutrient. Baloney, it's not a nutrient. To demonstrate that something's a nutrient, you have to starve an animal, take it out of its diet, and then demonstrate that some disease occurs. So if you take vitamin C out of an animal's diet, it will develop scurvy. And therefore, vitamin C is an essential nutrient. But they've never been able to demonstrate that any disease occurs because of a lack of fluoride. Tooth decay is not caused by a lack of fluoride, it's caused by too much sugar. It's not a disease caused by fluoride or lack of fluoride. So Dr. Carney is wrong on that. And it's pretty sad when your chief health officer is wrong on something as so simple and so basic as that. I could point to many documents which state categorically that fluoride is not a nutrient. Very serious is the fact that whilst your engineers can control the concentration at the public waterworks where the fluoride is put in, what they can't do is you can't control the dose that people get at the tap because you can't control how much water they drink. And you can't control how much fluoride they're getting from other sources, like toothpaste. In fact, when I was in Western Australia just a week or so ago, I met somebody in the mining industry, and they told me that miners in Western Australia can drink between 10 and 12 liters of water a day. Those miners, I tell you right now, are wrecking their bones, based upon what we know from India and China. They are wrecking their bones, and nobody's warning them if they're using fluoridated water. So you can't control the dose. Ask any pharmacist if there's any drug that he or she deals with in which you don't have to control the dose. That you look on that medicine bottle and it says, take as much as you want, any day, take as much as you want, 3 tablets, 5 tablets, 10 tablets if you want to. Take as much as you want. No, he'd laugh at you, wouldn't he? Laugh at you. And then the next thing, of course, you can't control who gets the medicine. It goes to everybody. It goes to bottle-fed infants. It goes to young children, old children, people with poor kidney function who can't get rid of the fluoride, or as much fluoride as most people can. It goes to elderly people. It goes to sick people. It goes to people with poor nutrition, including people with borderline iodine deficiency. This is a nonsense. And ask the pharmacist again, hey, is there any drug that you can give in this pharmacy that can go to everybody? Everybody. Everybody in the population could take this drug. Is there any other drug that they can all take? Again, you'd laugh at you. Of course not. You have to know something about the patient. And then talking about knowing something about the patient, there's no individual oversight by a doctor. There's no doctor in Mildura that is being required to monitor what happens to you with fluoride, as they weren't in Melbourne, and they weren't in Geelong. If it wasn't for heroes like Philip here, who've done this out of their own conscience, these people would still not know what was happening to them. And you hear about stories where people have these complaints, they go to their doctors have no notion that this might be caused by fluoride, so they start to give the medicine. And of course, the medicines themselves can have side effects. And so it gets worse and worse and worse, but never curing the cause of their problem. And yet, if they know, like someone like Philip knows, it's as simple as to cure as saying, avoid the fluoride, if they know. Well, that's not so simple, as you know. It's difficult to control your intake of fluoride once it's in the water supply. And there's no health agency There's no health agency monitoring for side effects. Never. Australia's been fluoridating for over 50 years. They haven't done a single health study. How incredibly irresponsible is that? To tell everybody that this is safe, but have never done a single study on health, just on teeth, as if teeth were the only tissue in the body. And they say things like, well, we've been doing this for 50 years, and if there was anything wrong, we would know about it by now. Baloney! You wouldn't know about some of these things unless you were looking. And for some things, like arthritis, which are increasing, and hypothyroidism that are increasing, they are increasing. So who knows whether it's fluoride which is contributing, exacerbating these conditions? They don't know because they don't look. Fluoride is a known toxic substance that interferes with many fundamental biochemical functions. In fact, the first opponents of fluoridation in the United States were biochemists because they had used fluoride to inhibit enzymes in their research. And the last thing you want to put anywhere near the body is a substance that interferes with enzymes. And since those days, since the 1950s, we've found many other things that fluoride interferes with. Hydrogen bonds, G proteins, complexing with every metal ion in the body except the alkali metals. So many, and I won't bore you with the chemical details, but trust me, the last substance that you want anywhere near your body and anywhere near a baby's body is fluoride. And these twerps put it in your drinking water. The levels, yes, you may applaud every time I say twerp. The level used in fluoridation is not small. It's 1 part per million. And they love to do this. They say, oh, 1 part per million is 1 cent in $10,000. It is 1 inch in 16 miles. Baloney! That's a cheap industrial trick. They did the same with dioxin when I was fighting that. They said, oh, 1 part per trillion is like taking a 1-second vacation after working 33,000 years. Well, wouldn't you want a 1-second vacation after working 33,000 years? I mean, it's baloney. It's absolute baloney. It's a meaningless statement to say that 1 part per million is small unless you know something about the substance. In fact, 1 part per million is 100 times the safe drinking water standard for arsenic. So don't make fun of that. 1 part per million is 100 times too much if you're talking about arsenic. If you were talking about dioxin, it's 1,000,000 times too much. So this is a cheap public relations effort. 1 cent in $10,000. It's actually 250 times, up to 250 times the level in mother's milk. Oh, remember Dr. Robert Hall. This is nature's screw-up. Oh, I'm so pleased that we've got the Australian Dental Association to clear up the problems that evolution has had with designing baby's first meal. I'm sure the Australian Dental Association and Dr. John Carney know more about what the baby needs than Mother Nature. Don't you think? Who do you think is most likely to have screwed up on this matter? Yes, okay. The twerps, okay. Now, great. Now, fluoridation should never have started, but there have been a number of occasions when it should have stopped immediately. And one of those occasions occurred in 1999, when one of the major proponents of fluoridation and promoters of fluoridation in the United States, the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, admitted that the major benefit of fluoride was topical, not systemic. In other words, it works on the outside of the tooth, not from inside the body. In other words, they got the mechanism wrong for 50 years. 54 years, because for 54 years they were telling that pregnant women should take fluoride tablets and you should give fluoride drops to babies before their teeth have erupted, so that the fluoride would accumulate in the enamel of the teeth underneath the gums. And so when the teeth had erupted, that strengthened enamel by fluoride would resist acid attack from the bacteria converting sugar to acids. And then they said, oops, we're wrong. Not enough fluoride accumulates in the enamel of the growing teeth to protect them when they erupt. It works topically. Well, the moment you, it's just common sense here, right? The moment you admit that, fluoridated toothpaste is universally available. And if it works topically, what you do is to brush it on your teeth and spit it out. This way you accomplish two things. One, you don't expose every tissue in the body to a known toxic substance. And two, you don't expose people that don't want it. So you solve both the political and the health problems in one foul swoop. If you want fluoride, it's there, fluoridated toothpaste. You don't have to do this. You don't have to do this. This is totally unnecessary. This is something that we're doing to ourselves because arrogant people are in charge. And they're so arrogant they can't even read two sentences. This is what they actually said. This is the Center for Disease Control. Fluoride's actions primarily are topical for both adults and children. And they said it again in 2001. Fluoride's predominant effect is post-eruptive and topical. Now, the chemicals used are not pharmaceutical grade. This is one of the things which is brought out beautifully in this Australian video called Fire Water. It's confirmed over and over again that the chemicals used are not the pharmaceutical grade chemicals that they put in dental products, but it's the hazardous waste from the phosphate fertilizer industry. Now, let me give a few more details. There's no question about that, by the way, but most dentists won't believe you when you tell them that, okay? This is the process. When you mine phosphate rock, and phosphate rock is largely insoluble in water. So to make it into fertilizer, you've got to make it soluble. And the way we do that is to heat it up with sulfuric acid. And when you do that, you drive off two very toxic gases, hydrogen fluoride and silicon tetrafluoride. And for about 100 years, these very toxic gases were decimating the local environment, the local vegetation, including the citrus groves in Florida, and crippling cattle. And after this had gone on for 100 years, we're slow learners, they said, oops, maybe we ought to have a scrubber on here. So they put a scrubber, a wet scrubber. It's a spray of water. And that spray of water converts the hydrogen fluoride and silicon tetrafluoride gases into a solution called hexafluorosilicic acid, which is contaminated with all kinds of other toxic metals and even radioactive isotopes, because the same ore that is mined for phosphate fertilizer is also mined for uranium. So all this junk is in there. And now there are going to be many times this evening that I'm going to call in the help, in my imagination, of Monty Python. I should tell you my greatest claim to fame was I played soccer with John Cleese. He was an absolutely terrible centre forward, but he was very enthusiastic, all arms and legs, but very, very enthusiastic. And so I like to invoke Monty Python a lot. And what they do, along with the goons that preceded them, Spike Milligan and others, some of you are nodding your heads, what they did is they took a ridiculous, absurd premise and then applied logic to it. And there's quite a few absurd premises here. And so the wet scrubbers produce this solution, this hexafluorosilicic acid, and they're not allowed to dump it into the sea by international law. And they can't dump it locally because it's too concentrated. So what should we do with it? Oh, well, Monty Python. Why don't we put it in the drinking water? Oh, what a great idea! Well, that's very good. Yes, great. Well, here's one of the vagaries of US law as far as hazardous waste is concerned. If you're an industry and you're producing hazardous waste, and you can get someone to buy it from you, it's no longer regulated as a hazardous waste, it magically becomes a product. And now it's a product, you can put that in the drinking water. And Monty Python, you can put it in the drinking water. And we had a town in New York, Johnstown, New York, where they stopped fluoridation. And they left with a couple of barrels of this hexafluorosilicic acid, and they said, we've got to get rid of this in 2 months. Because in 2 months, this reverts to being a hazardous waste, and it's going to cost us like $500 a barrel to get rid of it. So in 2 months, we've got to find another community to use this stuff up in their public water supply. Otherwise, we will have hazardous waste on our hands. Incredible, but true. So it's these silicone fluorides, which are not, they don't occur naturally. We're not talking about natural fluoride, but even natural fluoride damages people. And these silicon fluorides have never been put through rigorous toxicological testing. Incredible. Okay. Now, in the United States, we have the Food and Drug Administration, which is responsible for regulating drugs. And here we have a drug, fluoride, which is being given to more Americans than any other drug. It is going to, right now, to 180 million Americans every day in their drinking water. It's never been regulated by the Food and Drug Administration. The official classification is an unapproved drug. That's the official classification, an unapproved drug. And because the Food and Drug Administration is not involved, there have never been any randomized clinical trials, which is the gold standard for epidemiology, to demonstrate that swallowing fluoride reduces tooth decay. In 60 years, they haven't done the accepted study to demonstrate the effectiveness of this drug. Now, the Food and Drug Administration, however, does regulate fluoridated toothpaste in the United States. And if you go to the United States and look at the back of a tube of toothpaste, you'll see drug facts, you'll see do not swallow, you'll see use a pea-sized amount, like that, and it says, and this is the requirement from the FDA, keep out of the reach of children under 6 years of age. If more than used for brushing is accidentally swallowed, get medical help or contact a poison control center right away. Now, I know what you're wondering. You're wondering how much fluoride there is in a pea-sized amount. Well, let me tell you, it's 1/4 milligram. Now, 1 part per million, which is the level in your water, is 1 milligram per liter. So 1/4 milligram will be in 1/4 liter, or 250 mils, or 1 glass of water. Come in, Monty Python! Okay, well, I think to be consistent, we should go to the kitchen, and put this notice over the tap. Do not let children under 6 years of age drink from this tap. If you should accidentally swallow 1 glass of water, contact a poison control center immediately. I mean, it's bizarre, isn't it? I mean, but it's totally consistent. This is what... So the Monty Python applies logic to a ridiculous premise.